and I spin on my rolling pin every lefse. And then whatever falls, I work into the board. Then I have a little pile of flour over here, and I roll my ball of potatoes, and I kind of play with it, and that's just kind of how I play. The flour doesn't really work into the lefse. It just kind of keeps it all from sticking. And I never get a perfectly round one. And that's okay, it tastes the same. Sometimes I get lucky and they get round, but. And then it will almost like stop when it's this, when it doesn't roll anymore. And then just see how easy it slid off the board. Then the extra flour you can kind of get it off while it's baking.
You can do that when you flip it too.
Yep, and I do flip it. And then, because look at, you can see how much flour we get baked off. I have a lot of flour left over on my counter when we get done for the day. Whoops, that wasn't very smart. And then I usually try to sweep. I got paint brushes that I use just for my lefse. This one is actually a pastry brush, but I will use I have another paintbrush that I just use for lefse. And then I flip it over here on my pile. And there's still a little bit of flour residue. It doesn't bake in, you know, that's
You can use
nice.
a paintbrush on
yep,
that too.
Virgil uses paintbrush. I always just use my hands. And then I just keep stacking them up. And then I clean off the grill. See how much extra flour that actually didn't get in the lefse. It just keeps things from sticking. And then on to the next one. My handful. Work it into the board where I'm rolling.
That's a wood board underneath that cloth
Yep.
material there that we bought.
Well,
Guy
a
makes
friend of my sister's
makes those, but
made those, but
as long as you got a good surface to roll on, you're fine.
yep, the
Okay.
pastry, keeping the pastry filled with flour, pastry cloth. Oh, this one's getting a little bit more round. See, sometimes do get lucky.
Now we're going to try to do a session on proper mixture too, and our technique for mixing the dough so that you are less likely to have sticking problems, because that seems to be one of the major issues that crops up making lefse, is that it sticks to the roller, it sticks to the rolling pad there, doesn't turn out to look just like this. Okay, more later.
Sure, I'm ready anytime you are.
Done.
Done? Okay. Joe and I are gonna
Well,
give
we're
it
back.
Give it another roll.
Batch number 2. And we'll just let this run for a while so that you can have an idea of what our routine is. Maybe you can pick up a little trick or a tip that may be beneficial in what you make and how you do it. As we spoke earlier, keeping the flour off the griddle is important so you don't have that flour being cooked onto the left side.
Oh yeah, that's right. And we were gonna talk about if you have a bad spot spot on here, you know, where your dough gets kind of sticky. I will sometimes have that problem when I'm getting to the end of my batches. And what you do is, usually if you have a bad spot, I will take a knife and I will kind of scrape that bad spot. Try it, because it's gotten wet more than likely. It's gotten wet, and that's why it sticks. So you take a knife and you scratch and you get all that potato that was wet and you get it off of there. Then you take a little bit more flour and you just kind of rub it into that spot that was wet, and hopefully get it, you know, some nice dry flour worked in there so that it kind of absorbs it. And a lot of times that does the trick for me. But you usually, once it gets wet, that spot, you have to keep an eye on it, because it'll continue to haunt you.
I noticed you were kind of repairing the edges on those a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I try, but it doesn't always make it any rounder. Oh well, like I said before, it still tastes the same whether it's round or has a real interesting shape. Kids can make up stories as to what kind of animal or continent they think it is. Okay, then I'm going to get a couple more out of the refrigerator. Like I said, keep them cold. And it really helps when you've got many years. I've done the whole procedure all by myself, and rolling and cooking and rolling and cooking. If you can get a helper to help you cook, goes pretty darn smooth.
And as we mentioned earlier, just lightly brushing the flour off the side on this helps the taste a little bit. They don't taste quite so floury. And you want to be careful not to overcook them. If you have a hot griddle, it does not take very long for these to cook because they are very thin. Then brush them
And
off
it is
here.
important, yep, it's important to keep your grill between the 450 and the 500. If it cooks it too slow, then they really dry out then. And then I'll show you when we're all done with the process here, and I'll show you what I do to keep the edges. I get the edges so thin that they do get a little crisp, but I usually moisten them with a towel between batches. So I'll show you that later.
Notice this gets a little bubbly. And after a while, you get the hang of when to flip it. And if you're be careful not to tear it, because it's very easy to tear one of these.
Well, we've completed the rolling and baking of our lefse, and now, as Virgil was cooking them, he stacked them in a nice stack. And what I do now is I just kind of clean out the flour that he's been dusting off it. I kind of move it along. It is very warm yet. The whole stack is warm. So I usually, these aren't too bad, but a lot of times my edges will get quite crisp because of baking. And so what I do, while they're cooling, I just dampen. These are some old sheet rags that I have, and that's all I use them for is Lefse, and I have gotten them wet, and I just kind of drape them around the edges, and the edges will absorb some of that moisture and soften with the heat of the Lefse and with the dampness. It softens up the edges. So we'll do that. Keep them covered, and then we just let them cool for several hours. I usually, before I go to bed, I package them up, and we'll show that later.